All right, folks, so welcome back to the channel. So this is going to be Reloading 32 ACP Part 2. We're going to be focusing on resizing and just talk about a couple things that I've kind of found with that or different decisions I've made. And fortunately today, with the way the camera's set up, you can't really see the workbench too well, which is good because it's a huge disaster area. And the reason for it is right now I'm working on upgrading the other reloading bench I have where the Lee app and the Hornady progressive sit. So you're going to see that in an upcoming video, basically how I designed and set all that up, and did a whole new tabletop on it and everything, so that's going to be cool. And then also some project news as well in regards to the 32 ACP. I was able to find a Redding taper crimp die. And these I found to be a little bit hard to find, but one of the places I went to, Grafts and Sons, a lot of times Grafts is really good about if you're looking kind of more for some of the more harder to find, more oddball type stuff in regards to reloading or shooting. A lot of times you'll check out Grafts because sometimes they'll have what you're looking for. For instance, like Midway, couldn't find the die. They said basically it'd take 2 months to order it and all this stuff. But Grafts did have it, so I'm going to use that to do my crimping separately from seating. That was the recommendation I got, so we have that coming. The other thing, too, that is on the way is also I have a order of Starline brass. They actually have 32 ACP in stock right now. So I went ahead and decided to order some more of that. So basically with the order I put in, I should have more than enough brass to not only go through this whole project and load up everything that we need to load, but also too, I'll have plenty that whenever I'm kind of done with the project for YouTube, I can load up, a couple hundred at least just for have on hand for general shooting and all of that, and perhaps I'll order more in the future, but I think I have more than enough for right now. So that's kind of some project news in regards to what's going on with that. Then the other thing that we're going to do in regards to this project is this is one of those things that you can kind of think about in terms of logistics with reloading, in terms of how you want to do it. In this case, I'm not even going to think about or bother with trying to set up the progressive to do this project, nor am I going to trouble the Lee app with it either. This is a thing where just going to stick solely with the RCBS press. Now, for a lot of folks, whenever they get into reloading, oftentimes there's a lot of talk of, oh, you got to have a progressive right off the bat, and if you're going to load all this pistol ammo and do all this stuff. Actually, this press right here, I loaded, a 5-figure sum at least of 9mm with it, and also too, many thousands of 45 ACP, along with plenty of other rifle cartridges and stuff too. And the thing that I found, like right now I'm kind of going real slow and everything, but what I would kind of do is that if you're just stuck with a single stage press, is I do everything in batches. So like what I'm hoping is the new box of Starline brass is going to be coming here pretty soon, and I can basically bang all this out and get it all resized. Once I have that whole batch of brass resized, then I will move on to expanding and further on down the line through all the different steps until the ammo is complete. And that's the way I kind of rolled with it. So what I found with this is, like, you take resizing, for instance, pretty much if I got my 5-gallon bucket here and got, plenty of brass sitting right here on my left. Right now the camera's kind of in the way, so it's a little hard to do it real fast. But basically get everything kind of set up for speed is that I found that, I could, with a single stage press, hand adding one in, resizing it, pulling it out, dropping it, putting another one in. I could do about 600 in an hour, and so pretty much what I would do was that, I'd kind of get myself going like that, and, I'd come out for maybe 30 minutes at a time or an hour, whatever, and just bang them out and just get it done. And yes, it will take more time than the progressive, but you can get it done. You know, you can make it work. If you don't have the money for a progressive or don't want to mess around with it, you can make it happen. You know, so you know, you don't necessarily have to feel the pressure that you have to get a progressive. Because the thing you got to remember with a progressive too that nobody ever tells you is that they are more of a pain in terms of getting them set up, getting everything working together right, you know, getting it all synced in and all that. You got to maintain them a little bit more. They tend to be a little more fussy. If something gets out of line, you got to kind of deal with that. So when they're running good, yeah, you can crank the ammo out, but also too, they are a bit more intense, you know, labor intensive, and you got to kind of watch them a little bit more. And you know, they're a little more fussy. With single stage press, you know, just easy day. You're focusing on one thing at a time. Boom, 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 get it done. You know, whatever. So now with resizing. So obviously one thing with resizing 32 ACP, it's a little more of a rinky-dink cartridge compared to some of the bigger ones. Like, you know, you take 45 ACP, you know, very easy to reload in the sense that the cartridges are a lot easier to manipulate in your hands and all that sort of thing. These, you know, much smaller. I'm sure that when we get to powder and bullet and stuff, it's going to be a little more sensitive to deal with than perhaps some of those bigger cartridges. So with this, we have the Lyman die here all set up and all that. That's what we're using. And this is my first time using Lyman dies. And the one thing with this that I noticed is in regards to resizing, and I've heard some reloaders talk about this before in regards to the carbide sizing dies, especially like if you're talking to dudes that have been around for a long time and they, you know, started using carbide sizing dies, you know, early on, decades ago when they first came out. One of the things that they make note of in the instructions here is they say do not, like for instance, let's go ahead and resize this. So, you know, whenever you go and you set up your resizing die, typically, like if you take, whenever I've done it in the past with Lee dies or Redding dies, is I screw the die all the way in. So I run the ram all the way up and I screw the die all the way in until it makes contact. Now, you know, you don't go and you crank it down until it's like, you know, where the press is basically camming over, but it's a thing where at least they're touching, because you want to resize the case. You know, with this, the one thing that they said was they basically did not want you having the die touch the case holder. Well, okay. Because, you know, the carbide steel is brittle and, you know, potentially it could break or whatever. So what I ended up doing with this, and, you know, I guess it'll just, what will be, but I went ahead and ran the ram all the way up. And then I essentially turned it all the way down until it was just touching, and then just the slightest little bit, I turned it back, just a little bit, you know, to kind of keep with their instructions. So we'll see how that pans out in terms of resizing some of this brass and how that all kind of ends up working out in the long run. If that's going to work, especially maybe with some of these cases like that are sized differently or whatever. I don't know. So we'll see. We'll see how it works. Now, the other thing is that with this right now, I do have some once fired brass, which we are going to resize. Right now, we're just resizing the brand new Starline brass. Now, they will tell you that pretty much with all their brass that you buy, you don't need to resize it. It's pretty much ready to load. You know, of course, in this case, you'd have to expand the brass, expand the case mouth since it's pistol brass. But in terms of resizing and all that, it is apparently good to go. Well, you know, I've talked to a lot of people about this, and they're like, well, you know, still at the end of the day, you know, for different reasons, they have maybe the case mouths in production maybe get a little bit squashed or something. I don't know. You know, different reasons people come up with. In order to get everything at a baseline that you know is kind of the same for every piece of brass, go ahead and resize it yourself, and then that way you know. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. I'll go ahead and resize it real quick, and then boom, we know. At least we've resized it, and there's not some boo-boos from the manufacturing process. And this would apply to all manufacturers too. So you can do it however you want, but I'm just going to go ahead and just do it, so that way it's done. I know I'm good. Now, the only other thing that I found with the Lyman dies here is that sometimes whenever I would go to put the case in terms of this case holder actually holding it, it would kind of bump out a little bit. And then whenever I'd go to resize it, you know, it essentially kind of hit the side of the die there. So I don't know what that kind of is. I mean, I guess this case holder could be used for other cartridges as well. But I just have to kind of watch it that when I put it in there and kind of push it in, that it doesn't kind of walk back out any. So that is one thing that I kind of noticed with it. Most of the time, not a problem, but I did notice that periodically that would seem to happen. So I'll put the case in, just make sure it's in, and then go ahead and resize. So pretty easy, not too many issues so far. The other thing I think I'm going to order too is the only case gauge I could find for 32 ACP was from this company called Shooter's Box, which I have one case gauge from them which seemed to work very well, and another case gauge I got from them you couldn't even put factory ammo into. From just about any manufacturer, it wouldn't even fit. So I have to at some point put that aside and send that back to them and say, hey, what's the deal here? Because this ain't working. It ain't even working with any factory ammo, much less anything I'm doing. So anyways, so they're the only game in town, I think. I don't think anybody else is making a case gauge. And I just like to have the case gauge around as a kind of another means to kind of check everything. So, you know, anyways, so I'll probably order one and we'll give it a go and kind of see how that goes. But that's the plan. Oh, just had one right there. Pop you back in. Yep, all good. So I don't know why that is with this, but anyways, that seemed to be the issue. And who else is making 32 ACP dies? Well, probably Lee, I'm thinking. The thing is that when I got these dies about 2 years ago, you better stay there. You know, I looked around and yeah, there's not a whole lot, you know, on offer basically out there. And also too, if a manufacturer does make them, a lot of times they're out of stock. So I think I just went with the Lyman dies because that seemed to be what was available at the time. But typically myself, I prefer Lee dies for pistol stuff. That's been my favorite so far. So maybe I'll look around and see if there's some Lee dies out there if I'm not happy with the Lyman. But so far we'll give it a good run through with the Lyman all the way through the whole process with all the dies that they got. And then we'll kind of see what we think, and if we need to change gears, we'll do that. But anyways, folks, so that's kind of the state of the project and where we're at with it and how things are going. And the resizing part, you know, should be pretty easy, straightforward. So no big problems there so far. And yeah, so we'll get everything resized. The next step is we'll move on to expanding it, and then we will be priming it. So we'll see how it works in regards to actually seating some primers in these little cases here. So that might be something different. I don't know. Maybe it'll be nice and easy. Maybe it'll be a pain in the butt. We'll find out. So it's all kind of new to me in terms of loading 32 ACP. So you'll get to watch me go through the process and see how things kind of pan out. But anyways, folks, that's it for right now, and stay tuned. We got more coming up. I'll do a video too on the new reloading bench that I got kind of put together using some parts from the old one. So you guys will get to see that soon. And once I get everything back in place on that bench, we're also going to be starting the 9mm project that I kicked off back in June, and basically it got massively delayed. So we'll be doing that, and plus some other stuff too. So stay tuned, folks. We'll see you next time.